know from school.
So, onto Musar, I think we can all use a little bit of it. It's actually very relevant to what we were just discussing. I had the zechut yesterday of reading a very imbecilic comment made from someone who's... I read lots of imbecilic comments yesterday.
Hey, you've been active on social media. So active.
My Facebook feed has been on fire. And people...
So active.
Well, you have to read some of these posts.
I don't read about it.
You don't read everything,
so people have been
trying.
People have been getting upset. Like, how can you, as a rabbi, say this or say that? I said, I can say whatever I want because I can back it up with facts, I can back it up with evidence, and I can make a compelling argument for this. So now people have been saying, "Oh, what you're saying is awful," and they tag some guy by the name of Saeed Ahmed, or some supposedly moderate liberal Muslim who wants to argue with me. I said, "Come, Saeed, bring it on, bring it on. I fear no man. I stand by everything I said." So today they were very upset that I posted a picture of a Christian woman who was killed in very violent manner.
I saw this one.
Yeah, and they didn't translate the Arabic title on the top, but she was saying, huh?
It was a little tough.
It was a very graphic image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the image? So you have
It was an image of a Christian woman who was
stabbed with a cross.
Crucifix in her mouth.
You'll have
She was
to.
stabbed in a cross, with a cross in her mouth, pretty much.
So clearly she was unfortunately mutilated in horrible fashion. And what she wrote on top was هذا هو مديحات لإخواتنا المسيحيين في Syria. Like, this is what happens to this is what's being done to our our Christian sisters in Syria. There's a picture of the girl before, like smiling, is an old picture. Anyway, so what I was saying was that this insanity has to stop. The world has become desensitized. Like, why should we be surprised that nobody cares what happens to Jews being killed in Israel? Nobody cares what happened to Christians or the Yazidis or anybody else. So, people, when they're confronted with these things, they get very... people respond to trauma in very different ways. So, yeah, it wasn't meant... This isn't a Sesame Street kind of post, though.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that from you anyway, but...
Because rabbis really, they're not supposed to speak about atrocity and brutality and violence. We're supposed to tell people what they want to hear. That's what we're here for.
In America, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I missed my calling as a politician, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, I'll vote for you.
So at any rate, some of, naturally people are looking for logic, they're looking for rationale, they're looking for, like, how could God allow this to happen? Why would God do this? How can this be? How can this make sense? Are you reading the post, Doug? Enjoy it. And you have to read the post that I wrote after that, when somebody quoted this and said this was like the most horrible thing that he saw all day. Why? Not because they're killing Christian women in Syria, but because I made the generalization that all Muslims are violent terrorists. You have to read my response to that post if you really want to understand the day that it started with an inspection from the health department and only got better from there. So
that's just to forget about the health department.
It was just one long day of governments, one government after another. It's just too much government. So there's a rabbi, a very prominent, well-known rabbi, who has a Taimani accent in Israel, and he made a very idiotic comment, and he got up and he said that the reason that we're being attacked with knives is because the knives of the shochatim in Israel are not properly checked before shechitah. Because he's ever held a knife the right way, because he knows what a chicken looks like, because he's been to all the slaughterhouses in Israel, from Beit She'an to Rosh HaNikra. He's been to every single slaughterhouse in the country, and he's come to the quantifiable and demonstrable conclusion that everyone's knives are just not properly done. Why don't you show us how to prepare a knife? Why don't you do something constructive and productive and helpful and actually show us how a proper knife is made? No, it's not my job. My job is to be a prophet and tell everybody what they're doing wrong. So people respond very differently to these things. Why? What's the point that I'm getting at? Now that we've managed to soil the reputation of every shochet in Israel who's probably done nothing wrong. There's a very powerful Gemara that talks about the difference between David HaMelech and Ahab HaRasha, right? Because they were very similar except for one or two things. Who? Ahab, the husband of Izebel.
Okay.
So they killed hundreds of Nevi'im, they blocked the roads to Yerushalayim, they put Avodah Zarah at every intersection in Israel. And David HaMelech, he wrote Tehillim, Tipur Chatzot, he taught us how to do Teshuvah. Otherwise, very similar characters. Gemara says, Come and appreciate the difference between Ahav and... You only read the first part.
No, I read the comments and the comments with it.
No, there's a whole other post after that.
Oh, there is? Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. I'll tag you on it.
No, it's
There's no graphic images on
He
that.
still
one.
has to get married, you know, you can't take him on everything.
So,
So goes social suicide.
anyway, I'll be basic. If I have to be the only one who tells the truth, I'll be the only one who tells the truth. I don't care. Feel free to comment and retort if you have something to contribute to that conversation. But anyway, so what's the difference between David HaMelech and Ahav HaRasha? The Gemara says David HaMelech, he would wage wars. He expanded the land of Israel. Imagine that, he occupied territories. It's like an atrocity. And he waged successful military campaigns. But he didn't succeed in all of them. For example, he couldn't defeat Amalek. There was a small battle between him and Amalek. He didn't manage to defeat them. And he lost a number of soldiers, a number of his military campaigns. Whereas, bizarrely enough, Ahav never, in any of his own military campaigns, he never lost one soldier. Because clearly, David HaMelech, the tzaddik, and Ahav HaRasha, need to be compared and contrasted. Like, how can this be? Probably the most evil king that we ever had, Ahav. I think he pretty easily fits that description. We're told that Omri was a Rasha. We're told there's a number of them. Omri wasn't as bad as his father, but a number of pretty... we had superstars for kings, especially in the kingdom of Malchut Yisrael, as opposed to Malchut Yehuda. We had some real superstars. And so of all the things that Ahav did wrong, and he killed Nevi'im with his own hands, how can it be that Ahav doesn't lose soldiers and David HaMelech does?
Oh, it's the merit of the soldiers, maybe.
One would be tempted to think, the Gemara right away, by the way, it presumes that the king has something to do with this. If they're his soldiers, it's an embarrassment to him that his soldiers should die at war. It shouldn't happen. And it happened to David, didn't happen to... how is this possible? The Gemara says easy. Because in the times of David HaMelech, you had dilatorim, right? Dilate, like to dilate. So dilatorim is people who open their mouths, to dilate your mouth. People who open their mouths and who criticize each other and fight with each other. At the time of Ahav HaRasha, you didn't have that. Really. He didn't care much for the Nevi'im. Maybe he killed them without talking too much, so to his credit, at least he didn't speak Leshon Hara about them. Ahav's soldiers didn't speak Leshon Hara. They worshipped the sun, the moon, the stars, Peor, every Avodah Zarah on the planet. David HaMelech, they were all observant. In fact, the Gemara says, not there, elsewhere, the Gemara tells you David HaMelech, his soldiers would go to war with talitot and with tefillin. And Ahav, they were going out with Avodah Zarah, with icons, all sorts of crazy things. Now, how is it that David HaMelech loses soldiers and Ahav doesn't? So the ironic conclusion that you're left to draw, it's interesting, but it's very telling, is that David HaMelech, his soldiers were religious, but they would fight with each other. Avigal has never seen anybody religious fight with anyone. But there used to be times, Avigal, when people who were observant had arguments and they had disputes and they didn't necessarily get along, and I don't eat from your shechita and you don't eat from mine, and I don't go to that bet knesset and you don't go to this one, and I don't think your mother checks her vegetables for insects, and I think that my grandmother is the best. So they had arguments, they had disputes, they had fights over hashgacha, over kashrut, over locations, over who they follow, who they don't follow. I follow this rabbi. If he tells me to jump off a building, I'll jump off a building. I'll follow this rabbi. Okay, at time of Ahav, you had so many different forms of Avodah Zarah that people had this culture. It was like California. Do your own thing. Andrea's not here, so I can say, do your own thing, and stay out of my face. That's all. David, you pray to the sun. Shlomo prays to the moon. Adam prays to the stars. Yohan prays to the fire god. You know what, guys? We can be friends if we all agree to libertarian platform. Let's just not get in anybody's face. Laissez-faire, laissez-passer. Don't judge people. Don't determine or decide for them. No coercion, no force. Just do your own thing. Let your hair down. So, in the times of Ahav, of all the things you can say about a Rasha, of his magnitude, the one thing he managed to get across was, guys, there's a lot of different ways to get to hell, and we need to celebrate all of them. Some of us will get there by writing on Shabbat, some of us will get there by smoking cigarettes, and some of us by burning fires. Just at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we don't judge other people. We don't tell other people what to do and what not to do. You have your highway to hell, I have my stairway to heaven. Don't get in my face.
Except for Nevi'im that we kill.
So again, you can kill them, just don't talk to them first, because then you end up speaking Leshon Hara and it gets messy. So clearly, Achav, I mean, there's a discussion as to whether or not he has a portion of the world to come. But there's a halakha that we learn from this man. How you learn halachot from a man like this. That's the beauty of Torah. Speaking Leshon Hara is deadly. It's damaging. It's got the potential to, to sabotage our military personnel. If you want to know where your Leshon Hara, where your cohesion as a nation is being tested, apparently what the Gemara is telling you, you all knew this, just the connection maybe wasn't so clear, that the nation is being tested at a time of war. And what you're being tested on is your cohesion. And so if you lose soldiers, it's because the nation is incohesive. And if you manage to minimize your casualties, it's probably thanks to merits that we have that go beyond our military prowess, our military technology, our military prestige. There must be something else behind it. So naturally, with the advent of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the collective rise in the IQ of hundreds of millions of people, these discussions on social media don't necessarily contribute much to our spiritual and mental health, except that there are some really crazy and stupid things being said by lots and lots of people on all different sides of a particular subject. And we do have such a thing as an obligation to speak up and to speak out. Right now, the Israeli government and the military have launched a campaign already. This is maybe 2 or 3 years old, of what they call, well, in its current reincarnation, what they call hasbara, which is we actually need to tell the truth. I know it's hard, but we need to tell the truth. There are lots of crazy accusations made against us, and unfortunately, not all the people making these accusations are Arabs. Some of them are Jews. In fact, you have members of the Israeli Knesset who are treasonous and treacherous and traitors, and who should be hanged in public for their crazy ideas and for their incendiary rhetoric and for their effectively approbation of all that is terrorist resistance to the state of Israel. And you have members of Knesset that are maybe a little bit less inclined to politically correct discourse. And somewhere in the middle you're going to find the truth. Maybe not exactly in the middle, but we have lots going on. There's a fire right now that's burning out of control, and it's not just the actual military campaigns, it's also how does the nation look and how do we conduct ourselves in times of difficulty. It's easy to talk about Leshon Hara when everybody's living happily and nothing is going on. The challenge is that you feel really strongly about things, and you have, points that you want to make. There are issues or subjects that you want to discuss. You want to make sense of it. Sometimes you want to learn someone else's opinion, or you want to castigate or excoriate someone else for their own opinions. And there are certain things that you need to be careful about. So specifically because Chazal tell us that especially when it comes to times of military threats against Am Yisrael, we have to be extra careful about what we say and how we say it. Not only what we don't say, but also what we do say. And yes, there is a mitzvah to publicly shame and to expose people who are hypocrites and people who are contributing to terrorism and people who cause Jews to be killed with their irresponsible words and their irresponsible actions or their irresponsible votes in the parliament. So we have to be careful about this. Now, I think it would be potentially a little bit, I don't like to use the word dry. The Zohar does, so I'll make reference to it in the sense that we could go through the halachot chapter by chapter, item by item. Just a little bit more difficult to learn that way. I think it's a little bit more meaningful to take specific examples, specific cases of things that should or shouldn't be said, and to explain what the rationale behind them is. And so, just for the sake of being polemical, and also because I had a beautiful and decorated discussion with an imbecile over the summer on this particular topic, there's but one of those real imbeciles, like who learned in yeshiva for a year, so obviously he knows everything. There is nothing anyone could teach him, and no way you could prove to him conclusively that he's right or wrong or correct anything he has to say. So what of the concept of naming someone or identifying someone who did or is doing something negative or damaging or hurtful, identifying this person by name for the sake of, or for the purpose of what really would be the question. But let's say there's someone who's doing horrible, terrible damage to Am Yisrael and to Eretz Yisrael, right? I mean, most of the left in Israel is probably in this category in one way or another, but let's presume Balad, like what they call the Brit Leumit Demokratit, right? This is the National Democratic Covenant, is what this party calls itself. It's like the latest crazy reincarnation of Shalom Achsham, which basically presumes that all the problems in Israel are the Jews' fault because these people are fundamentally anti-Semitic, because they believe anti-Semitism has truth and virtue and value to it. And so they have no criticism for the Arabs, they have no condemnation of terrorism. All these people do is foment rebellion and revolution and effectively try to incite violence amongst the Arabs. They defend them legally, they'll offer them lawyers, and they'll try to advocate for the release of terrorists as political prisoners, basically what they're trying to present. It's a lovely group of people that have no business being alive. The damage done by these people is immeasurable, and obviously they're favorites on places like Al Jazeera, Al Qaeda, and all the great terrorist websites and their social media networks. So if I want to identify someone by name and say that this individual is doing something wrong or is saying something crazy, or that we need to respond publicly to the accusations being made by the people in this group, it's not hard to justify that the damage being done is terrible and it needs to be corrected, it needs to be fixed, or it needs to be responded to. Right? By the way, don't take literally what I said before about members of the left or Balad needing to be exterminated. I'm using hyperbole, and I'm using like the incendiary rhetoric that we're getting used to seeing on the internet right now. Kill all the Jews, kill all the Muslims, kill everybody. So I'm sure some of them are nice people. They have no business in public policy, and they really shouldn't be in the Knesset, but that's a whole other story. So I'm going to start with a total extreme example of a Mishnah in Masechet Sotah. The Mishnah in Masechet Sotah makes a very interesting comment. It says that Shimshon HaGibor wandered, got lost after his eyes. He followed his eyes, and that's why when he was captured, the Philistines, aka the Palestinians, gouged out his eyes. So his eyes were removed. Why? So here we are back on the topic of why are we being attacked with knives? Because the knives of the shochatim must be improper and inappropriate, which is naturally, as if the Torah tells you your punishment for eating this, you're going to get stabbed by someone. So why don't you just stab the shochatim? Make it easy. So I'm just trying to find the logic. If you want to entertain a negotiation or a discussion or a debate, you have to understand what the other side is trying to say. I don't even know what he's trying to say. Don't eat meat. Eat my meat. Don't buy his.
This guy has a nashgas person.
No, but you wonder what he's trying to get at. So why would, and we're familiar, so Leshon Hara, Shlomo, Leshon Hara, classic example. Chazal are guilty of Leshon Hara, right? Of course. Did they say something about Shimshon HaGibor?
That he went after his eyes.
Well, did they name him, first of all? He's identified, it's a Mishnah, for the love of God, it's not a mistake.
Yeah, but it's to teach others.
Oh, so it's okay to speak about someone and to identify him by name in order to teach other people?
What is it?
That's what I said.
So can I not justify everything I have to say about everyone under the umbrella of, really, Shlomo, it's the only way to save you. I want to protect you from evil, so I'm going to tell you what I think about everyone else who's wrong.
Well, it's easy to try to find justification this way, but in that case, there's an actual teaching behind it, I guess.
The same thing at child molesters. There's a whole debate, child molesters, whether you
Well, there's a debate only in Brooklyn.
No, but you know what I'm saying? It's some people were hiding some. Not in Brooklyn. It was huge in LA for years.
Really?
Yeah.
All the child molesters live there.
By Schusterman from Beverly Hills.
Uh-huh.
It was a huge thing.
No, we had on the East Coast too, that's not fair. There was a rabbi associated with NCSY. I went to school with his kids, lovely kids. But there were allegations made. Here it was better because YU and the OU tried to defend him, and then when it came out that he was actually guilty, everybody looked stupid. So why? So you're saying, what? This person presents a clear and present danger, right?
Oh, that there's no question.
All right, so here there's not even, that's not even
no danger
a discussion.
He was dead
Not a
already.
discussion. My point, and this is, by the way, I went through all these items one by one, and this guy still couldn't be convinced, but I'm trying to illustrate a point. This guy was saying, for example, that, so it started with a post that someone put up about the rabbi that, the mikveh webcam
Friedman.
rabbi, Freundel?
Friedman.
No.
Barry Frandol or something.
Freundel.
Oh, yeah.
So it started with a post about him and how he was explaining, or his attorney was explaining to the judge why he doesn't really deserve to go to prison because his reputation has suffered enough. Right? 10,000 hours. Not 100 hours, not 1,000 hours, not 9,000 hours. 10,000 hours this guy has of
Recording.
illicit recordings, right? Because hour 10,001 was going to do something for him that hour 2,500 didn't do.
10,000 hours he had?
It was crazy.
He's
It
going
was
to
on,
jail?
Of course he is.
Yes, he's going to jail, and he deserves to, and I hope he stays there for a really long time.
I think 6 years or something.
Whatever he got wasn't enough. I think it was 5 to 10 was the sentence, the potential sentence for him, and they gave him more than the minimum because they had to send him in. If you give him 5, you're like looking for an excuse not to
You see,
punish
I
him.
disagree with you. Like, okay, continue, but that means.
No, please. I want to hear the defense of why it's okay to put a webcam in the camera.
Jail won't, first of all, jail won't take away at all the pain, the suffering that he did to all those women. It's not
Right.
because the guy goes
No,
So-
but you're
So
discussing
if
the
I
whole concept of jail.
wait,
No, I'm
No.
saying like
For
that's
anything.
spec-
No,
But
please. I want
that
to hear
specific
this.
concept of jail.
So if I
Like,
strangle
he goes
someone,
to jail, so what? So his reputation is shit. He's gonna come out. His reputation stays shit. Nobody's gonna want to be
no,
with him.
Shlomo, let me
It's
just.
like you're not gaining anything.
Shlomo, let me surf your wave here a little bit, right? So what you're saying is that if I strangle someone, why would you put me in jail? I only strangled him because I hated him. You're not going to bring him back. So why should I be punished for killing him?
If you kill somebody,
Yeah, if the guy was a jerk, I shouldn't be punished at all.
no, I mean you don't deserve to like hang out, like you're like endangered. I don't know what I'm saying. It's like you're endangered to.
Okay, he did something criminal, reprehensible. I'm not even talking about the Chilul Hashem. I'm talking about American law, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he did something criminal. It was a criminal invasion of the privacy of hundreds of women who trusted this man, right? Forget the Chilul Hashem aspect. It was a criminal invasion of people's privacy. You're making the case that he doesn't even deserve to be punished for what he did. Actually, what the guy who put this post up was saying was that I can't believe that he has the chutzpah. Forget that he didn't even apologize. He didn't even apologize. He didn't have the what did he say? He said,
He wrote a letter.
yeah. Did you read the letter?
That post was about the letter.
It wasn't a very convincing
When he
apology.
wanted to go, and he said, like, I would love to go to every person and apologize in person, but I know, like, I heard people way too much to approach them. I'm not just.
So my debt to society has already been paid by my reputation being dinged. Therefore, I shouldn't have to go to jail.
No.
That was the argument he was
No,
making.
that's dumb. I agree.
Okay,
But I'm saying
I thought
going
so.
to jail won't help anything.
Right. So I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to live.
Make him a slave. Make him like send him to the gulag. No, like, no joke.
What difference does it make?
Send him to the gulags. You know how they used, what they used to do in Russia? They used to send you to Siberia.
Yeah, I know what they used to do in Russia. They used to kill 25 million people without telling anyone why. I mean, so Neshama, if this weren't your apartment, I would respond to that.
Next, putting him in the jail with people that killed the others or people that raped others.
I mean-
like just won't help the kid. Won't help the guy.
Right. So I think, first of all, incarceration isn't a bad remedy for people who've abused their liberties.
Freedom.
They've abused their freedom, right. They've violated the social contract. You can't go around killing people and expect society to still want you to be there. I mean, you don't have to agree. There's a whole discussion about this in what they call legal
That's
theory.
What I'm saying. So put him for life. Don't
The
put
theory-
him to 6 years.
No, but the theory behind the law is that there's a certain social contract that you're born into. I didn't ask to be born, at least not that I remember. But once you're born, the laws of the country that you live in apply to you,
Okay.
assuming they're just and more or less morally reasonable laws. And so you don't get to choose the consequences prescribed by society for your actions. Hopefully in a free society you can vote, you can influence public policy. But at the end of the day, you don't get to decide what's a fair punishment for someone if it's prescribed by the law. You can choose your actions, you can't choose the consequences of your actions. So you criminally invaded the privacy of hundreds of people. Terrible thing. Society's decided that you need to be put away. But there's a bigger picture behind this. And the bigger picture, and this is always the case, is the question of policy. It's the question of law, or halakha, or musar, or however you want to define it. I can discuss this guy, and I can discuss his case, and I can discuss the details of his case, specifically because that is pertinent and relevant to everyone. with a number of conditions. Number one is that the case is public. Okay? It's one of these fascinating details of Leshon Hara, that once something was publicized in the presence of 3 people, and in this case it's more like 300 million people, 360 million if you want the whole population of the United States, it's not really a secret. And everybody knows about it. It kind of belongs to the public. You familiar with this? There are certain concepts or notions or items, like intellectual property eventually dissolves. Intellectual property eventually becomes part of the public domain because other technologies can be built on it, because other theories can be based on it. It's the way it is. You can give credit to someone where it's due, but you don't get to retain intellectual property patents necessarily forever. In some cases you can, some cases you can't. In case of music or musical references or lyrics, sometimes you can tweak things a little bit. Fine. So we as a society need to talk about things like this. Now, he is going to prison. He's probably not going to pose much of a threat to anybody but his roommate in prison, who I hope is going to be a perfectly nice guy, and I'm sure they'll get along great.
For 6 years.
They'll play bridge.
Sure, for 6 years.
For 6 years.
And then?
Well, we as a society need to decide what to do about situations like this. In other words, this sparked a whole controversy, a whole debate as to who should be allowed access to the local mikveh. Should there be a protocol or some kind of a standard in order to regain the confidence of the average Orthodox woman, or maybe not even so Orthodox woman, who wants to go make use of the mikveh the way Halakha prescribes it? What do we do in order to reestablish the trust that we need, men and women in our society, to have, both in the individuals who are in positions of authority and leadership, and in the institutions that we have no choice but to make use of? So schools, in the case of teachers that were caught abusing children physically, sexually, etc. And in this case we're talking about the mikveh, which is really something very intimate and very private. But knowing the details of the story, knowing how it happened, knowing what it was that tempted him, knowing how he clearly had an addiction, right? Because remember, our 9,998 didn't somehow satisfy his appetite. And he went ahead and recorded our 9,999.
Over a year of recording.
It's
Over
right.
a year's worth of recording nonstop.
No, I think this was like
It was a
10
full
years.
year, like
No,
Right,
it's,
so
yeah,
you're running-
it's like
running
I
four,
mean,
six,
it's definitely
6 days.
sick. The guy had like folder with names of women that night. It was like definitely
Really?
sick. Yeah. Yeah, of course. It was like super
Oh my
organized.
god.
right. I mean,
Yeah, it was just.
Organized?
Wow.
Yeah, it was like.
this
That
was
makes it
organized.
so
Yeah.
much worse.
right. So it's organized crime. That doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
It had like
it
a folder
is.
for each woman. It's
Like,
It's weird.
Right. So
Did they get back the videos? What did they
Probably
do?
just destroyed.
no, I'm sure they destroyed
I
them.
hope they
But
destroyed
at this
everything.
point already, it's it is what it is. Now, the question is, why would it be halachically permitted for us to discuss such a case and to discuss the details of it? And so, on the most restrictive level, we generally don't talk about things unless they present a clear and present danger to someone. So if you were to ask me, on a local level, I want to go do business with Adam Polruve, I would tell you, so maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not a good idea. He's from LA. I don't know how this is going to work out. You can, you might be privy to more information. I might give you more detail than I would give Yohan. If Yohan were to say, what do you know about this guy? Is he reliable? Can I trust him to whatever? I lend him $100, he's going to pay me back. Maybe he's good for $100. You want to lend him $100,000 and start a business with him in a partnership? Maybe it's something else. So my response might differ depending on the needs of the person who's asking. Then you have somebody who pertains to or relates to an entire community. So you have a rabbi who's been, violently abusing the kids in the school, like beating up the kids who don't do their homework. Or you have a teacher who's been, a crazy story like this in Rehovot in Israel. There was a woman teacher who was having inappropriate sexual contact with boys in her class. She was married. It was a whole disaster. It would have been a disaster if she was single too, but it doesn't make it any better that she was married with kids. So it's like, if already you're going to hell, you're saying you should go with a smile, like taking the oof on top of everything else, and just so and then there are theories and principles and foundations to the nefesh that you can only discuss when you have concrete examples to work on. And so as long as the example is public enough, right? Think Shimshon HaGibor, the Navi tells us what happened there. It's not like the man can hide from this. It's in the book. Nobody's, I mean, Rav Tzadok Lubin wrote a long defense of this whole thing and how he explained that he had the potential to be Mashiach of his generation, but this particular concept of like marrying a Palestinian woman, Philistine woman, in order to exact revenge from them and destroy all of them, I mean, there was just a little bit of not L'Shem Shemaim in there that blew the whole thing up. But he explains he was a tzaddik and everybody accuses him of, like out of proportion. Okay, but Chazal said what they said. His case is public. We learn halachot from it. Like, we learn principles and concepts from it. I can give you any one of a dozen messages that a careful reading of the story and the commentary of Chazal on it ought to teach you. Number one is that even giants, even very influential and learned and knowledgeable people, sometimes make terrible mistakes. Number two, the mistakes made by people in positions of authority and people who have the public's respect are generally much greater and have much more far-reaching consequences than the mistakes made by simple, ordinary people. Number three, you might be convinced that what you're doing is 100% L'Shem Shemaim, and a little bit of not so much L'Shem Shemaim creeps in there, and it becomes very difficult for you to make these determinations when you're already involved in the situation. Because when his father got mad at him for marrying this Philistine woman, and he says, and the psukim say, his father didn't know that he had a plot. Like, I'll marry this woman in order to kill the Philistines that are attacking us. So he had a plot, so it's okay if you have a plot, right? Lesson number 5. No. Even if you have a plot, and even if your avirah seems to be L'Shem Shemaim, it's probably a really bad idea anyway. Probably best avoided. Find another way to do what it is that you wanted to do. Maybe for all I know, there was no other way to do it. Maybe this just wasn't what he was supposed to do. And then, at the same time, it was prophesied before he was born that his job was to defend the Jewish people from the Philistines. Lesson number 6. You might be prophetically ordained for a particular purpose and still not be allowed to accomplish this through unadvisable or illicit means. Just because God told you that you're going to defend the Jews from the Philistines doesn't mean you can go ahead and marry a Philistine girl. Actually, he did it twice. And it was the second one that got him in trouble. So, lesson number 7, romance makes things very, very complicated. I mean, it's hard enough, just a normative house with Shalom Bayit challenges like everyone else has. When there's other agendas going on, it makes it even more difficult. He was tormented and she tortured him into giving her these secrets. So, lesson number 8, I think we're at now, is, secrets are really hard to keep. Best kept to yourself. Even if someone applies pressure to you, don't give it up. And at the end of the day, Kadosh Baruch Hu did withdraw his powers. By the way, where does it say in the Torah? Let's assume we're in Parashat Naso, right? That's where the Nazir appears, right before the Sotah. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, there's a connection between the two. Imagine that. The Zohar Kadosh makes this connection. The Nazir, right? Chazal said, why does the Nazir appear right after the Sotah? Because someone who sees a Sotah in her moment of disgrace should become a Nazir and swear off wine. Why? Because if she was an adulteress, it probably started with a good bottle of Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon. Chances are she was drinking something and she got herself in trouble. And so I would see this and I would be horrified and say, look at this. Because she allowed herself to drink. Anybody who's been to our house on Shabbat has heard us make mention of the fact that halakha forbids a man pouring a drink for a woman who's not his wife. There are reasons for these things, my friends. So, anyone who sees a sotah in her moment of disgrace should be so moved, so motivated, as to make himself a nazir, right? Or herself, for that matter. It could be a woman too. So if that's the case, we should forbid wine altogether, right? How did it happen, by the way? It's interesting, right? We talk about, first, your reaction to adultery should be nazirut. That's a simple equation. How did it happen in the case of Shimshon HaGibor?
Well,
When did he become a Nazir?
When he was born.
Before he was conceived.
Yeah.
So we call it Nazirut Shimshon. He was a Nazir his whole life.
His mom, no?
His mother was told, right, she received a prophecy that he was going to be a Nazir. So he's a Nazir, and he ends up having forbidden sexual relations. It's not called adultery, we'll call it, the Gemara says, Jewish man, non-Jewish woman, it's considered adultery, but let's leave that for now. It's like Gemara, the Zohar Kodesh, the Gemara. So there's also this kind of inverse relationship between Nazirut and adultery. Like, so I thought really the solution to all of our problems was to become a Nazir, and that way there are no problems. So let's be Muslims and not drink altogether. And here by Shimshon it works backwards. First he starts out as a Nazir, and then somehow this maybe or maybe doesn't create issues with like living a whole life of Humrah and then allowing yourself something that's really Asur. I thought it was supposed to be the other way around. I thought it was supposed to be you can indulge while it's permitted, and then you see someone who went too far, and then you back off it. The pendulum of humra and khula, of like leniency and stricture, you just swing it the other way. And then you find out that in his case, he started out really strict, and it was really hard to keep that up for very long, and so eventually something was going to give, and it became very difficult for him to do. So I learned a lot of things about the story of Shimshon that I didn't even know. And if I didn't have a concrete example with all of its glorious details, I wouldn't be able to have this discussion. I could only tell you so much. I could say it's a really bad idea to have relations with a non-Jewish girl. Why? Because you'll get killed and they'll gouge your eyes out and they'll shave your head. There's a whole bunch of details to the story, and it's got a plot that goes back and forth, and at the end of the day, there are lessons that we can learn from it. So here was the question this Haredi guy was asking me. When this story about Rabbi Frohnel came to the news, and for the love of God, it made every major news outlet, they love nothing more than this, right? Like the hypocrite, supposedly religious Jew who creates a trend as Chilul Hashem. And to be fair, when it comes up in Catholic priests and imams, imams a little bit less. In England they had scandals with this, they didn't report it. So the guy says, I think it's terrible that you posted this Leshon Hara. I didn't post it, somebody else did. So I said, really, and why is this Leshon Hara? Oh, no, it's a terrible thing because you're not allowed to talk about somebody else's. Really? So with all these details. Well, then he says, well, he's not posing a clear present danger to me. I said, what clear present danger did Shimshon HaGibor pose to the rest of the world when the Mishnah that mentions him was composed easily 800 or 900 years after he had already died? In fact, probably longer than that. 1,000 and 1,200. Okay, so you do read some of what I posted.
Lee Fogel was involved in that conversation.
He was the one who posted it, and I was defending what he said. And I said, no, it's important for us to publicize these people. Actually, there's more details than that, because I mentioned that the Gemara itself says, on Yom Kippur, in the Bet Knesset, assuming that very many people don't come to, I don't know how it is in Italy, but in America, a lot of people don't come to Bet Knesset any time of the year except Yom Kippur. Like, if you were to spread a dragnet and try to announce something publicly, that Yom Kippur was their equivalent of Twitter. And so I want to make a public announcement, and everybody in the community has to hear it. What? This guy who teaches in this school molested a child, and then this woman is having an affair with this guy. I don't know. If it's someone that the people assumed was responsible and respectable and had a position of authority, and you find out they're not, they would make announcements to this effect on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, you would think it's like you have a knife on your throat, and God forbid, maybe I'll live, maybe I'll die. And they would make these announcements on Yom Kippur. So people should hear, and people should know, and people should learn from it. So he's saying, but why couldn't he have made the same point without mentioning his name? I said, Chazal mentioned the name of Shimshon HaGibor after he was long dead. Why would Chazal take such a risk, or why would they do such a thing? Right? And then he responded the way your typical imbecile responds, by saying, nothing you say is going to convince me, and my Rav told me that you're wrong, so I quit. You can keep on trying.
So I give up.
Well, yeah, basically. So I said, no, you can't. I asked him questions he couldn't answer, and then he just ran away. So it's a very powerful halacha. Obviously, you need to check and balance this with Yirat Shamayim. You need to make sure that you meet the other conditions of Leshon Hara, which is that you have no personal hatred for the individual. You're not doing this in order to spread hatred, in order to damage the person's reputation. If the person's reputation is already gone, it doesn't exist anymore. And not only this, but people are coming to his defense, or people think there's something defensible about him, or people took his apology as if he was serious when he said, I don't think I should go to prison. You should be exempt. You should be in prison 10 times longer than your average ordinary citizen, and you deserve that they should make an example out of you, because aside from the tremendous Chilul Hashem that you created, you abused the very power with which people entrusted you. People gave you this power in order that you should have responsibility and authority and help guide them, and instead you were using this for your own personal benefit. You are a politician, my friend. You don't even know it. And the crime for being a politician should be a minimum of 25 years in jail. You don't have to agree with me, but we can discuss. We need to learn from these things. We need to learn from these, what were the root causes of this problem? How do we treat the phenomenon in general? There is such a thing. People, this generation, unfortunately, in addiction to pornography is horrible. But even a rabbi can be, bothered by this to the point that he sacrificed his own marriage and his whole life and his whole career and his whole reputation over what was only 10,000 hours of video. How do you watch? I don't want to.
Did his wife
How do you store that?
Where do you store it?
I don't know.
How many lifetimes? That's like 5 gilgulim worth of video. I
Did
mean,
his wife
It's
divorce?
416 days of video.
but that's consecutive days without
consecutive
sleeping.
days. Yeah.
So Red Bull, coffee, chocolate. How do you stay up that long?
It's a marathon.
No, man, like you're storing this for posterity. Like it's the craziness of addiction is the point.
Right.
When you hear about someone who has a heroin addiction, and they're taking like $12,000 a day worth of heroin, you're like $12,000. I don't make $12,000 a month. Where do you find the money to buy this much drugs?
It's 10,000 hours, which is probably like, you know what I'm saying, like a woman goes for like an hour, but like these interesting things like 25 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
So it's only really 5,000 hours.
I think we're kind of out of the
Shlomo,
line.
if I didn't know you personally,
No, you know what I'm saying? Or no?
Rabbit, do you know what he's saying?
You know what I'm saying? Or no?
Rabbit.
It's like fast forward on the movie when you're 18 years old.
What, you should know.
I'm gonna reserve comment for Facebook as soon as I get home. I'm not gonna say. I'm just gonna tag you. That's all.
I'm trying to find him some credit for the
I mean,
10,000 hours.
no, but the point that I'm making, and this is true by the way of a lot of different kinds of addictions. And this is another thing that you can learn from the story is that addiction, by its very definition, is something that defies logic. There is no logic to an addiction. The very fact that you're addicted to something means that you can't control it. And if you can't control it, you end up doing wild, crazy, stupid, irrational things in order to try to satisfy your addiction, which by definition cannot be satiated. There's no way that you can satisfy your addiction. Like, I know heroin's a bad idea, but still. I'm just gonna this one last time, and I promise that's it, and then I'm done. And the cycle keeps on perpetuating itself. It gets worse and worse and worse till something blows up and something gives. So, it's just the sheer volume of insanity is something so powerful. You see such a thing, and you should be scared straight for the rest of your life. You say, my God. Look, I can tell you that from the rabbi's corner, I watch something like this and I say to myself, here's a guy who at some point in his life probably learned Torah. I mean, I imagine he opened a few books. Probably he got smicha from somewhere. Could such a thing happen to me? Could I come to a point in my life where I have 10,000 hours to waste? And I don't know. It's humbling is what I'm saying. It's very humbling that such a thing could happen to an adult who's otherwise rational, someone who negotiated a pretty good career for himself, someone who was influential, he was in touch with politicians. That's probably where the problem started.
I personally don't think it's sickness.
You think it's a normal, rational thing to do?
Honestly, I'll tell you the honest truth.
Avigail is looking for the door.
No, I know. I'll tell you the honest truth.
Yeah.
He's such a high, public figure that he can't cheat on his wife. He can't do anything. What do you want to? He has no other way. He's not attracted by money.
That was a fantastically French response.
No, but it's true though.
What you're telling me is that,
No, I'm not justifying. I'm just saying.
what you're saying is
the
it's
guy
normal.
wants to cheat, but everybody knows him. The entire city knows him.
So the whole situation.
This is
No,
nothing.
but
it's not a question.
the whole
of
situation
number
would have
of
been
hours.
resolved if only he could cheat on the sly. Nobody would know about it. Like, why is cheating on your wife a good idea? I mean, we should.
Not
talk.
it's a good idea, but cheating on his wife is not. Nobody will look at you like, oh my God, like you're going to jail for 6 years.
Well, see, I would look at him. I would give him very dirty looks. Yeah, I would.
Of course,
I would
but
probably say something.
it's more of a normal man thing to do
That's a normal
than a
man thing to do.
10,000-hour movie
So,
from a
right,
movie.
Where do you-
well,
where
okay,
do
but if you can't cheat on your wife,
Gonna go over
what you say is true, right?
Do you know what I'm saying? You know?
I hear what you're saying, but if what you're saying is true, and this guy wants to cheat on his wife and he can't, but then he's gonna resort to filming 10,000 hours.
It's not his resort, but it was like his inner evil was the only way to express
So
it.
it is.
Oh wait, so hang on. So I follow you to the point that there's a terrible, terrible Yetzer Hara to do really, really bad things, and probably, it's everyone has a challenge. Everyone has a Yetzer Hara to combat. We all have this bête noire that needs to be restrained somehow, right? We could have a discussion about how to handle Yetzer Hara, how to minimize the damage and what you can do in order to prevent a good situation from getting bad and a bad situation from getting worse. the expectations that we have of people in positions of authority and positions that command the trust of the people that you're working with are very serious. I understand that along with expectations, that along with a public life, come lots of pressures, right?
Correct.
Like, I live this. I know that there are pressures. I know it's difficult. So sometimes people find different responses to pressure situations. People react to stress differently, right? Sometimes when I'm on the phone in a really annoying conversation, I'll play one of those like Pac-Man video games. Like my Yetzer Hara, that'll sharpen knives, but you know, like you find a vent. You find a safe way to conduct a controlled explosion of a little bit of frustration, and you prevent it from getting bigger, right? But there's supposed to be a mechanism somewhere in your nefesh that you first of all recognize when your Yetzer Hara is getting strong, and then you have to check and balance and filter some of your thoughts. Maybe it's permissible that, you know, you can find a halachically condoned way of releasing this kind of pressure. Let's say the guy's married, he was married, he had a wife, she still does, but and then there's like, then you start to end up in illegitimate places. Like, I'm gonna do an avira, I just haven't decided which one or how many. Right? And that's where that's where addiction begins. That's where it's not about
Right. So
satisfying the yetzer. That's where you're just feeding a bear. You're just
I just don't
looking
think
for trouble.
I don't think he's mentally ill. That's what I'm saying.
So this
I don't
is
think he's a psychopath.
okay. Psychopath. See, I don't think
Like,
he's
you know what I'm
looking-
saying? Like when you just said
I
it
don't-
was a
right.
humbling experience
No,
for you.
fine.
That you said, would I reach that level? I don't think the guy was born at 18-year-old thinking he was going to creep on women in the mikveh for 10,000 hours.
Right. So this much I'll give you. I don't think he did this in order to hurt anyone.
100%.
I don't think he was malevolent. I don't think he was trying to kill anyone. He didn't sell any of this information. He did some very screwy things, though. Like these female candidates for conversion, there was one or two of them that he went into business deals with, and he signed a joint checking account with one of them.
I didn't.
Yeah, look
sure.
into it. So there was a lot of weirdness there. The guy certainly gave himself lots of permits to do lots of things he shouldn't have been doing, which is my point. My point is that the difference between a normal, rational, logical, healthy, functioning Yetzer Hara that we all have and an out-of-control Yetzer is the difference between an appetite and an addiction. What we call in Hebrew te'avon and ta'awa. Te'avon in Hebrew, right? Ta'ev. You're hungry for something, and you can satisfy this hunger. By definition, an appetite is something that can be satisfied, right? So if I'm hungry and I can eat kosher pizza or non-kosher pizza, I can eat kosher meat, I can eat non-kosher meat, I can have kosher fish, non-kosher fish. So it's an appetite that can be satisfied in more than one way. And here the Gemara has an interesting statement where it says, when it comes to people's halachic observance, your normal, average, healthy adult, la shaviq inish haticha dehetira wa achil isura. Your average, normal, ordinary, functioning, healthy adult won't leave a piece of kosher food in order to eat something non-kosher. Like if you give me on two trays right next to each other, I'll eat the kosher food. Maybe when I can't find it, maybe when I'm traveling, maybe I'm in China, and I don't know, so you have a yetzer and you eat something. It's not the right thing to do. I'm not saying it's even a mitigating circumstance. Maybe you could have eaten fruits or vegetables, you would have been fine, but you wanted to eat snakes because you were in China. Okay, so you had a yetzer, you did what you did. The difference between te'avon and ta'awa, as in chivrota ta'awa, is where the nation says, we want meat, we want onions, we want garlic, we want leeks, there's no logic to this request, and as much food as Moshe gives them, it's not enough. You cried about the water, you have Be'er Miriam. You cried about the bread, you get the man. Now you're crying about meat. And here Moshe Rabbeinu gives up. He raises his hands. I quit on these people. They quit on me. I can't, this is not working. It's not gonna, nothing I do is gonna be enough for them, and I don't want to do this anymore. And it's the one time in his life that you say, Moshe Rabbeinu, you lost it. What happened that you all of a sudden, like you could tolerate so much, and at this point you give up? Chet HaEgel, you didn't say this. Why is this any worse than Chet HaEgel? So Rosh Yeshiva Rav Sabato talked about this. This is a definition of an addiction, it's an appetite that's out of control. And it's what he tells them. It's called the Gei Hayam. Well, all the fish in the sea, all the animals we can slaughter, it's not going to help, because their problem is not a problem of appetite, it's a problem of addiction. They're addicted to Gashmiut, and nothing we give them is going to be enough. And he's telling you, I'm not even going to start. I don't want to feed this because tomorrow they're going to do something worse. And the day after they're going to do something worse. And there's a difference. There's a difference between wanting something or desiring something and being totally out of control. You say he wasn't a psychopath. He was a sociopath. That's the difference. A psychopath is normally someone who's not bothered by doing something otherwise construed by others to be, let's say, malevolent. You know, a sociopath violates the social contract, like believes he can do things or should be able to do things that do insult and offend other people. So maybe he's not looking to kill people, he's not looking to really physically harm them, but his appetites were so out of control that if you had stopped him at any given point in time and said, Rabbi Fronel, do you really think that this hour 8,736 is necessary?
He would tell you no.
He might do it anyway. But he might rationally tell you no. If you were to tell him, Rabbi Fardel, you realize that at some point, this yetzer, which keeps on growing on you, this yetzer, which keeps getting bigger and bigger, this bottomless pit, this abyss that you keep on throwing your neshama into, you realize that at some point it's going to get so big that you can't hide it anymore. Someone's going to find something, your perfect crime is going to come undone. Do you realize that your marriage and your relationship with your kids and your relationship with God and the Torah and your community, people who've never met you and never heard of you, will not be observant because they heard of what you did. You will lose your reputation, you will lose your career, everything you've ever written will be shredded. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Right? And he would probably tell you the same thing that Bill Clinton or any other political psychopath and sociopath would have said, which is, no, it's not worth it, but I'll never get caught. And they always get caught. These guys always get caught. And your appetite is so out of control, that your behavior is so modified, that he lost control at hour number 1.
Right.
The idea that he should go and do such a thing, the idea that this is a normal way to satisfy your yetzer or your curiosity or whatever it is, that was already crazy. And the idea that this should continue, that this should go on, that you should actually be allowed or permit yourself to do this. I mean, at some point I think he changed the camera or something, or he maintained it or whatever. And that's when he got caught, because one of the girls saw the red light behind this clock. It's weird.
Updated the camera.
Updated the camera, right.
Resolution.
And he had...
HDMI.
And you come to this conclusion that at no point in time was he going to stop, which is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped him. And do you realize how far you've gone, man? You could be reincarnated 3 times and you don't have enough free time to watch these things that you've been recording. This is just crazy. There's no logic. There's no reason to be doing it. And he had 1,000 opportunities to stop. He had 10,000 opportunities to stop. And he went ahead and he persisted and he went ahead and he did it. Masechet Sotah, like Gemara says, this is another fascinating thing. Chata b'shana hutar lo. Someone who did an avera and he repeated it, it's already permissible to him. The Gemara says, could it be hutar lo sal kadatach? What, it crossed your mind there should be mutar? I said, no, ne'asa lo keheter. Because once you violate something the first time, it's bad. But if you don't have a bad feeling left from, like a residual bad feeling from what you did, the next time you do it, you've broken your inhibition. That's it. You'll never feel bad about doing it again. You made a mistake once, you can think about it. You made a mistake twice, your ability to think about it has been broken.
Right.
It's become so normal, so rational, so routine for you that your ability to stop yourself is going to get lost. It's a very scary place to go. But here's back to the point. This was a rabbi, man. This was someone who learned, someone who knew. He saw that Gemara probably more times than I have. And then I have to ask myself these disturbing questions. In a way, it's almost good that things like this happen because at least I can learn from it. I thought I was smart. I thought I knew everything there was to know. I thought I was perfect. And then you see somebody who, more accomplished than me, at least in some ways. Certainly in the pornography industry. You were saying, Doug? We're going to destroy this whole video.
Yeah, this video cannot go
This is apocryphal.
It's going online tomorrow.
Right.
I was like, there's got to be a lot of editing that goes behind the scenes.
I'm not doing the editing.
Look at Microsoft here.
Listen, actually, this video is so interesting. We put it on YouTube. I think we can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he was thinking. We put this on YouTube. I can make up.
I can't wait to... No, I can't wait to...
I'm saying, but the fact that you posted, you posted something like this on Facebook. But let's say talking about it in a way, it's like we're assuming that affirming our shock for that, how much we are appalled by that, is not Leshon Hara. It's actually one of the positive things too, because why you can say something about that if there is something positive to gain from the fact that you talk about it, right? You publish something with the name of this person. We do that because there is a positive. We think otherwise it would be Leshon Hara if there is no positive outcome from the fact that you posted. So the fact that it's positive, it means that the outcry from it is a positive consequence.
Well, there's a number of mitigating factors. If you want to get down to the technical details, and we have to, we're going to do more of this.
Yeah,
I'm going to bring you cases after cases. I mean, just
so if you do
my experiences in this. I've come across so many different situations, and there were situations, by the way, where there is no positive outcome. There's just no reason to talk about it. It could be private. It could be secret. It could be that the danger has expired.
But in this case specifically,
it could be that there was a threat that was never actualized or realized. I mean, but in this particular case,
what does it mean?
First of all, there's the Chilul Hashem. First of all, there's the Chilul Hashem that needs to be addressed. If everyone sees this, and everyone, Jewish and non-Jewish alike, knows that some crazy rabbi did something absolutely obscene that no normal person would have thought to do. Well, a lot of abnormal people would have thought to do it, but nobody normal. So this needs to be addressed by the Jewish community as a whole. Someone needs to step up and say, this guy from this town on this day did something wrong. We reject it. We oppose it. We're shocked and we're appalled by it. And we ourselves are going to take actions to remedy this kind of problem that unfortunately, it turns out, happens even in our communities. There's a Chilul Hashem aspect that absolutely obligates us on a national, public level to address something that became national and public. So that's let's say good number one that results from such a thing. Good number two is the more technical aspects of how this happened. It's maybe still another aspect of the Chilul Hashem. Maybe it's still an aspect of how this happened. So there's the public trust that was violated, and then there's the personal trust where you have to say, it happened to him, it could happen to me, I need to be more careful about this. So any woman who goes to the mikveh for the rest of her life, having heard the story, is going to think to herself every time she goes, there might be some psychopath who put a webcam somewhere. And you have to go anyway. And you just raise the bar and raise the price of going to the mikveh because you have to deal with these anxieties and you have to deal with these issues, these inhibitions. So there's the issue of how do I address the fact that women are now going to feel much less comfortable about going to the mikveh, and that can only be possible if they know what happened and how we addressed it. So here, in this particular case, and it's a gem of an example, how are you going to prevent the Chilul Hashem created by women who don't want to go to the mikveh because of people like this? They know what he did, they don't know what you plan to do about it. So his avirah is public, his whole operation was public. What you're going to do also needs to be public. You need to address the details of the story and tell me and promise me that you're going to fix each and every one of these failures. So failure number one, why was he even given, technically he might use the mikveh for other reasons too. So he goes in the morning before tefillah, fine. I don't know how much of a Kabbalist he was, apparently not a really good one. But, there are reasons why a man would want access to a mikveh. Maybe men and women shouldn't use the same mikveh. Oh, Rabbi, what you're saying is going to cost a fortune. You have to build 2 mikvahot. Well, maybe in Washington, D.C., there were enough people with enough money that could have pulled it off. I'm sure they could have come up with $100,000.
In the city, we got a bunch of mikvahot for
you have
for
mikvahot that are already exclusively for men. Maybe in the beginning they were for women, and because they didn't have cabs and they didn't have trains, everybody walked. So in Israel, most places like that, you have a mikveh that's good for used by men in the morning and women at night. And they keep it simple, and they keep it easy, and they close it an hour or two before the Shkia, and then it's only women at night, and then in the morning, men go for whatever reasons. But all these things need to be addressed, they need to be discussed. The women know what was wrong, because they're all reading about it, because it's public, and they don't know what you're going to do to fix this.
And Rivka, who does the mikveh shift, she told me that whenever the story broke, you had a bunch of people asking questions about it.
I'm sure there wasn't just a bunch of people asking questions, I'm sure there's a bunch of girls that maybe
they were scared.
About going.
They felt, they were asking, do you have surveillance cams or things like that?
Yeah.
I don't know the details, but...
Are there surveillance cameras? Do we need them for safety purposes? They once thought, for example, I don't know what the end of the story was, but they thought that there was a pipe that exploded, they thought maybe it was sabotage. Turns out, I don't know what the conclusion was, but So maybe we need surveillance cameras in a mikveh. And if there are surveillance cameras, who has access to them? Where do we put them? And where are the monitors? How is it streamed? If it's live video, who gets to see this?
Or you stop them a few hours a day when they're not needed.
The cameras.
Yeah, when you
Maybe
know
when
that.
the mikveh is not being used, is when somebody can break in and
Exactly.
steal
So when
money
when the mikveh is
in.
in use, you know the peak hour, and you can turn it off.
But what if one of the women stole something? These are difficult questions, but they have to be addressed. They have to be addressed. In some communities, they were saying only women should have a key to the mikveh, or only 2 women should have a key to the mikveh. Or if it's men, they should have 2 or 3 of them that have to be there at the same time, so you never have a situation one of them is there alone. Because if he went to the mikveh with somebody else, maybe he could have pulled this off. Rabbi, what are you doing? Oh, you're putting a webcam? Oh, cool, put one for me too. You would have said something. People are embarrassed to do averot in public. That's why he did it in the privacy of his own home. But you have to be very, very delicate about these situations. But the reality is you have to address them too. Nothing is gained by ignoring it. Everybody knows what went wrong and nobody knows what you're going to do to make it right. It doesn't put you in a better position and it embarrasses the entire nation. But we'll talk more about the technical details of this. But having the details is crucial. Knowing if the story went public, then it already becomes the public domain. It's not just Leshon Hara to talk about it. It already becomes criminally responsible to pretend you don't know what happened and not to address it, not to try to make it any better is equally critical. So, we're going to let them all back.
Wait, so anything that someone does in public